All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to now get into talking about Deshaun Watson, his injury, and what's going to happen with the Browns going forward. So they played the Bengals yesterday. Bengals picked up a much-needed victory. So now they get themselves, back in the conversation. They're now 3-4 on the season. But, the Browns, their season is looking like it's pretty much over. Deshaun Watson has not played well this year. And, people were talking about, including myself, why is Jameis Winston, not in? They need to make a quarterback change. And, Kevin Stefanski constantly saying, we're sticking with Deshaun. He's going to be the guy. And, a lot of people are talking about, well, is that coming from the owner? Because you put this huge investment on Deshaun Watson. And you bench him, you're essentially saying, yeah, this contract is a disaster and, we are waving the white flag. So really, it's like, well, then I guess the only way that Deshaun Watson is not going to play is if he gets hurt. And he ended up getting hurt. Non-contact injury, likely an Achilles, and that means, he got carted off the field. That means he's out for the year. He's out for the year. And, Browns fans seem to be pleased by that. And you had guys like Myles Garrett. I saw what Jameis Winston had to say as well after the game, coming to his defense. And I'm not going to, sit here and talk about, what has gone on about Deshaun Watson over the years because it's out there. We're not going to get into it. But, it's a rough situation all around. And for me, the Browns, they thought when they acquired Deshaun Watson, they thought that they were going to be getting the quarterback that we saw in Houston that played really well, was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL for those years. And it's just so much stuff has gone on, and, they gave him this big contract, and he just has not lived up to it, and he's never going to live up to it. I don't know what the Browns are going to do because, again, you got this contract on your hands, and he's likely out for the year again for the second year in a row. Now, he played a few more games, but it really doesn't matter. They're 1-6. They are 1-6. And they're going nowhere. They are going nowhere this year. I had them winning 10 games because I thought with this team and you get Nick Chubb back, they'd be good enough to, finish with the winning record. And I thought Deshaun Watson, would be inconsistent at times. I thought he would put together some good games and then there'd be some bad games. Well, he never had a game where he threw for over 200 yards. It just never happened. And then, you have Amari Cooper being traded, and that kind of signaled that, yeah, maybe, we're kind of giving up on the season. He went 15-17 for 128 yards yesterday. Then DTR comes in. He goes 11-24, 82 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Then he hurts his finger, and Jameis Winston, who actually got demoted to the third string, but actually he was the emergency quarterback. So he had to come in, and he threw a touchdown. He threw a touchdown to David Njoku. Final score ended up being 21-14 Bengals. And it's like, well, who's going to be the starter now? Is it going to be Jameis? Is it going to be DTR? I will be at Browns-Ravens next week. So I hope it's Jameis, but we'll have to wait and see on that. But yeah, this Browns season has just been a disaster. And, this kind of put a damper on Nick Chubb's return because Nick Chubb, after his long road back, he scores a touchdown. Didn't have a big game, but he did score the touchdown, which was awesome to see. And hopefully, from here on out, it gets better and better, and at least could give Browns fans something to be excited about. Just having Nick Chubb back on the field is great, but you lose Deshaun Watson, and who knows? I mean, we'll see how the offense looks, with either DTR or Jameis. The Browns are still dealing with injuries, and this looks like the team that's going to finish in last place. The Steelers, I mean, they won last night. We'll get into that game tomorrow, the Jets-Steelers, because there's a lot to talk about with that. I'm sure I'm going to hear about it in my production meeting, being the Jets, the Jets spokesperson, being optimistic about the Jets. But that's for tomorrow. With the Browns here, yeah, I mean, they're the last place team right now. Bengals, put together 2 wins in a row. They're getting themselves back in the conversation. You got the Steelers and the Ravens at the top of the division. Ravens play tonight. I mean, the Browns season's basically over. It is, unless whoever plays quarterback, they just went out. But yeah, this is just for the Browns. This has been a disaster. I mean, there's no other way to put it. And they were better off keeping Baker Mayfield. I'm sorry, they just were. Kevin Stefanski didn't believe in him, I guess. They went in a different direction. And, I mean, it's just, last year it's the shoulder, now it's the Achilles. I mean, where do you go from here? Do you just eat the money? I mean, that's what the Broncos did. I mean, you're likely going to be a team that's, picking in the top 10. If you keep losing games, I could still see the Browns. Like, I feel like the Browns still have a roster that's good enough to win some games. I mean, whoever plays quarterback, if it's DTR, if it's Jameis, I mean, I don't see them finishing with 1 win on the season. I don't see that happening. But, I mean, what do you do? What do you do if you're the Browns? I really don't know. Because Deshaun Watson, even before the injury, was not playing well. But you have this huge investment in him. Like I said, the Broncos moved off of Russ. Browns could definitely do the same thing with Deshaun Watson if they wanted to. It's just you're gonna have to eat the money. So it's a very tough situation. Obviously, you don't want to see guys get hurt. I mean, injuries just continue to plague this season. I mean, I know I kept saying it before the year started. Let's hope for not as many injuries as last year, but it doesn't matter. It's injuries are inevitable. But it's just for the Browns. Quarterback continues to be a problem, and I really don't know where they go from here, honestly. Like I said, it's either going to be Jameis, it's going to be DTR. Go outside the organization, bring somebody else in. But yeah, their season is pretty much over. That's a team that I just don't see them getting back on their feet and making a run. And this is why fans wanted Joe Flacco to stay. I mean, Joe Flacco came in late in the year last year, and he propelled them to the playoffs. The Browns won 11 games last year. Just think about that. They won 11 games last year with 5 different starting quarterbacks. Again, Jeff Driscoll, he started the last game of the season, but still, 5 different starting quarterbacks. This team right here won 11 games last year with no Nick Chubb either. And now they're 1-6. They are 1-6 on the season. Their only win is against the Jaguars, who got a win yesterday against the Patriots. Not a good football team. And we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. Are changes on the way? Because you got to remember, Kevin Stefanski, right, won Coach of the Year. Coach of the Year he won last year. And now, I mean, this team might win what? 4 games? 5 games? Let's look at their remaining schedule. Let's see. But again, we don't know who the starting quarterback's going to be going forward. If it's Jameis, if it's DTR. So they got the Ravens next week. That should be a loss. Home against the Chargers. Look, the Chargers are not a bad football team. They play good defense. They run the football well, although I hope they don't run the football well tonight because I'm going against J.K. Dobbins. I hope he does nothing tonight, but that's besides the point. Those look like 2 losses. Bye week at the Saints. You know, the Saints are not a good football team right now. Maybe they could win that. Home against the Steelers. That's a divisional game. Could win that, but, you know, the Steelers right now are playing good football. Could be a loss. At the Broncos. Broncos play good defense. Broncos beat them last year, although that was with Russ. At the Steelers again. Home against the Chiefs. At the Bengals. Home against the Dolphins with Tua, most likely. And then at the Ravens. Not a lot of wins there. Not a lot of wins there. You're looking at, I mean, they could be reverse of last year. They could be 6-11, 5-12, 4-13. There's not a lot of wins there. There's more losses. There's more losses there. So I don't know. We'll see what they end up doing at quarterback, but it's just not looking good for them. For the Bengals, though, you know, Joe Burrow didn't throw for a ton of yards yesterday. They didn't run the football great. T. Higgins and Jamar Chase both had touchdowns. A couple of interceptions in the game. The defense, 4 sacks. Bengals are starting to play better, although they beat the Giants and the Browns, 2 of the worst offenses in the NFL. So, you know, now they play the Eagles at home, which is a big game. You know, they got the Raiders after that. I mean, they could definitely get back to 500. And we'll talk about the Eagles-Giants game tomorrow. And Saquon's return, of course, played really well. I mean, are we surprised by that? No. But we'll get into it. We'll talk about it tomorrow. So, Bengals could get back to 500, and then they go from there. But, yeah, for the Browns and their fans, it's looking like another rough season. And for the Bengals, they might be turning things around. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about the injury of Deshaun Watson. What do you think they should do? Should they bring in a quarterback? Should they start Jameis? Should they start DTR? Let me know in the comments. So, I mean, I think they should start Jameis, but that's besides the point. But anyways, before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the super chat button in the chat to create any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it, and it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker. And once again, it's not being shown on the ticker every time I do this. The link is GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the epic matchup game between the Lions and the Vikings. The Lions winning on a late field goal. We'll get into that. We'll talk about it when we return from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.